Welcome to today's video, which covers factoring. So this video is a factoring review. You learned factoring in Algebra 1, and I believe you covered a little bit of it in geometry. So this should mostly be review. There are three main types of factoring that we should hopefully remember. GCF, product sum, and difference of squares. So we have GCF, product sum, difference of squares. We're going to start with GCF. GCF is always the way you start every factoring problem. So I'm looking for the greatest common factor, something that goes into both terms. So if I look at my two terms, first thing I notice is I have a 6 and a 9. What's the biggest number I can take out of both of those? Well, I can take a 3. Then I need to look. The first term has an x cubed. The second term has an x. That means at most I can take an x out of both terms. And then I have a y and a y to the fourth. The most I can take out is a y. So 3xy is our GCF. In parentheses, we put what's left. So out of the first term, the 6, I took a 3 out, so I have a 2 left. X cubed, I took out 1x, so I have an x squared left. And then the y I took out. Out of the second term, so this term right here, 9, I took a 3 out, so dividing that 3 out gives me a 3 left. I took the x out. If I have y to the fourth and I took out a y, I have y cubed left. So this is my answer. That's our factoring. If I look at that second problem to the right, again I have two terms. Got to figure out what I can take out. Looking at the numbers, the 12 and 2, largest number I can pull out is a 2. The first term has an m, the second one doesn't though, so I cannot pull out any m's. M is not part of the GCF because it's not in the second term. And then lastly, the first term has an n squared, the second term has an n, which means at most I can pull an n out of both terms. Okay, so in the first term then I have a 6 left, mn, plus, be careful here, this is where a lot of students mess up. I had a 2n, I took a 2n out, that means I have a 1 left. A 1, a lot of students forget that 1. So this is my answer. Now the question is, how can I check my answer? How do I know that that's right? Well, if I were to distribute that 2n, I should get back to where I started. So let's try. If I distribute the 2n, I get 12n squared m plus 2n, which is exactly where I started. Now, the first term, the order of the variables is a little different. That's fine. It's where I started, which means I have the right answer. So that's the first type of factoring. Any factoring problem you have, you always need to look for the GCF. Second kind of factoring that you're going to see is product sum. So if we look at the first example, x squared minus 16x plus 15, we are looking for two numbers whose product is that 15, so who multiply to 15, but whose sum is negative 16. So two numbers that multiply to 15, but add to negative 16. Now, you may be able to do that in your head, maybe not, so let's think of some numbers that multiply to 15. Well, I have 1 and 15, which is close. Negative 1 and negative 15 will give me that sum of negative 16. So I'm going to do negative 1 and negative 15. Again, those multiply to 15 and add to negative 16. So then my answer will be x minus 1, x minus 15. And that's it. So let's look at that next example to the right. Again, this is a product sum problem. We are looking for two numbers whose product is negative 72 and whose sum is 1. So multiplies to negative 72, but adds to 1. It might be helpful for you to make a table. So some numbers that multiply to negative 72. Well, how about negative 1 and positive 72? Those don't add to 1. We have negative 2 and positive 36. Again, that's not it. We have 4 and 18. We have 6 and 12. None of these add to 1 yet. we have 9 and 8. Negative 9 and negative 8 will give us negative 1. But if we do 9 and negative 8, we get that positive 1. So then, this time I have an m instead of an x. So I'll get m plus 9 and m minus 8. Now, that's my final answer. Doesn't matter the order, I can put the negative 8 first if I wanted to. Again, if I multiply this out, I should end up where I started. So let's try that. Some of you might remember the term FOIL. I like to make a box when I'm multiplying. So I'll put m plus 9, m minus 8. M times m is m squared. I have 9m, negative 8m, and negative 72. So combining my like terms, I get m squared plus m minus 72. That's where I started, which means I have the correct answer. Now, I don't expect you to show that every time, but if you're not sure on your answer, that's a good way to check. Next type of factoring that we have, you can see, is number 3, difference of squares. Okay, the name tells you exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for difference, which means subtract, and then of squares, so of perfect squares. So if we look at that first problem, we do have difference, there's subtraction, and we have perfect squares. 4 is 2 times 2, 25 is 5 times 5. Okay, so the way that we get 4 is 2 times 2. The way we get 25 is 5 times 5. That 4x squared is really 2x times 2x. And then, to get a negative 25, we have 1 positive 5 and 1 negative 5. Again, that is our answer. If we wanted to check our answer, we could multiply it out, similar to what we did on the previous problem, either foiling or using the box, and we should end up where we started. The problem to the right, 25, 16, those are perfect squares. Again, it's a difference. As soon as you have addition, that's no longer this kind of factoring anymore. This is only when you're subtracting. Okay, so 25 again is 5 times 5. 16 is 4 times 4. Okay, so now we have y squared. That's y times y. What about this x to the 4th? Well, x to the 4th is x squared times x squared. So I have an x squared, an x squared. And again, to get that negative 16, we would need a positive 4 and a negative 4. So this is our final answer. Okay, that was a very quick review on GCF product sum and difference of squares. This is something that you did see in Algebra 1, you might not remember it though. I will tell you, there is an optional video on Schoology if you want some more factoring review. So if this was too quick for you, please go check out that optional video on Schoology. The last type I want to get to is called split the middle. This is something that you've seen before. It's another type of product sum. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is how do you know that you're splitting the middle? You're going to have to use this method anytime there's a number in front of the x squared. That'll tell you you need to split the middle. Okay, so this time you're looking for two numbers that multiply to something and add to something. They're going to add to negative 11, that number in the middle. Before, we were looking for two numbers that multiplied to negative 4. Things are different now, though. Because there's that 3 in front, you're going to multiply 3 and negative 4 to get negative 12. So you're actually looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 11. Okay, so I have negative 1, positive 12. Ooh, that was right. Oh, not yet. Nope, that gives me positive 11. Okay, I'm close though. What if I did positive 1 and negative 12? That'll give me negative 11 then. Okay, so things are a little different. Before, we would have done x plus 1, x minus 12. That's not the case though. We have a few more steps. So this method is called split the middle. It tells us what we need to do. We need to split the middle term. instead of writing it as negative 11, we're going to write it in terms of those two numbers we came up with. So we have 1x minus 12x. Now we got to ask ourselves, are these the same? Is negative 11x the same as 1x minus 12x? Well, yeah, it is. Okay, so that's good. We're going to bring down our first term then. Bring down our last term. And then we are going to factor on both sides. So we're going to cut our equation down the middle, factor on the left, and factor on the right. On the left side, I'm looking for a GCF. I can take out an x. When I do, I'm left with 3x plus 1. On the right side, I have negative 12x and negative 4, so I'm going to take out a negative 4. And when I do, I end up with 3x plus 1. Now, if I'm doing things correctly, these two in parentheses should match. So that's good. I got one more step. My first factor is 3x plus 1. It's the stuff that is repeated. And then the terms outside make up my second factor. So this is my final answer. Again, you can check your answer. Like I said, you can FOIL or I like the box. So I have 3x plus 1, x minus 4. If I multiply out, that gives me 3x squared, positive 1x, negative 12x, and negative 4. So I get 3x squared, 1 and negative 12 is negative 11x minus 4, which is exactly where we started. Again, I don't expect this for every problem, but it is a good way to check your answer. So you have an example that you are going to do, and it's this next one. Again, this is a split the middle problem because that's 6 out in front. So you are looking for two numbers that multiply to something and that add to something else. In this case, adding to negative 23 and multiplying not to 20, but remember we got to use that 6. 6 times 20 is 120. So you are looking for two numbers that multiply to 120 and add to negative 23. This is your problem to finish. When I look at your notes turned in, I'm going to make sure that you have this problem done. I expect you to check your answer at the end, so multiply out and make sure you end up with what you started with. If you want some more examples, there are a few more on the next page. These are optional. So if you want to stay on, these problems are optional for you. Okay, so let's look at these next few problems. First problem, like I said, you're always going to look for a GCF. Always look for a GCF. In this case, both terms I can take a 3 out of. And then I have x squared minus 4. Now, I might not be done yet. I have to ask myself, does this factor? Does this factor, this x squared minus 4? It does. X squared, 4, those are perfect squares. And we're looking at a difference. So x squared is x times x. 4 is 2 times 2. To get that negative 4, we need one positive and one negative. And don't forget to bring that 3 down. So that is our final answer. Okay, next problem. This is a product sum. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to negative 5. Multiply to negative 6 and add to negative 5. A lot of you probably think of negative 2 and negative 3. That does not work though. That multiplies to positive 6, not negative 6. So this one's a little tricky. It's negative 6 and positive 1. Now, there's no number out in front of the x squared, or it's a 1, so we don't need to split the middle. We can jump right into our factors. So we get x minus 6 and x plus 1. Again, if you wanted to check this answer, you could multiply it out to make sure that you get the polynomial you started with. Okay, last problem. Be careful here. Do not do extra work. In this case, I can factor out a GCF. So I gotta ask myself, what goes into 24, 16, and 30? Well, 2 does. I'm actually going to take out a negative 2. And when I do, I get 12x squared minus 8x minus 15. Okay, so was that hugely helpful? No, but the numbers are a little bit smaller at least. Now that 12 out in front tells us that we need to split the middle. We need to split the middle. So here's what we're looking for. We are looking for two numbers that add to -8, but multiply to -180. Not 15. So add to -8, multiply to -180. Okay, there's a lot of numbers you're going to have to go through. But maybe you saw this right away. I know that 18 times 10 is 180. And if I make that 18 negative, those two numbers will add to -8. Okay, so at this point, remember, it's split the middle. So this middle term needs to be rewritten. I'm going to rewrite as 18x plus 10x. Bring down my last term. Bring down my first term. Okay, now we're looking for GCF. Out of the first two terms, I can take out a 6x. And I'm left with 2x minus 3. Out of the next two terms, I can take out a 5. And I'm left with 2x minus 3. Again, what's in parentheses should match. That's our first factor. Our second factor is what's outside, so that's 6x plus 5. And remember, you took out a -2, so that is still part of the answer. That's a common mistake, is to forget the GCF that was taken out. So this is our final answer. Hopefully that was helpful. Again, there's that optional factoring video on Schoology if you want to watch that. If you have any questions, please make sure you write them down or send me an email.